Hi everyone, this is Terry Miller with Terry's Tidbits, along with Carla, who is my incredibly smart partner as we help folks work through the Advanced Admin Study Group. This week we are focusing in on the advanced concepts around reporting. We had a couple of topics here where we had to do a little bit of a group think. And I think we still hit all of the relevant topics that you are going to need to know for this particular exam. So let's jump in and take a listen. All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is our Advanced Admin Study Group, and our topic today is all things reports. And so our first presenter is George, and I'm going to let you go ahead and share your screen and kick us off.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Please confirm you can see my screen. Okay, so this is analytics, reports, and dashboards. I'm going to cover 3 subtopics. Custom report types, a very powerful tool. Reporting snapshots, pros and cons. And then we're just going to touch on complex charting. There's just really not enough time to get into that in depth. And the topic of analytics, reports, and dashboards is 10% of the exam, so clearly very important. I'm one of 3 presenters today, so there's more topics underneath this category. As we get started, we're going to do the configuration, and I'll do a very brief demo of custom report types. You can see where we're at under setup, feature setting, analytics, reports, and dashboards. But I want to talk about a couple of key concepts first. So one thing that's very important is the object relationships and the data architecture hierarchy. So your primary object, the object that you select first, is critical because that is the most important object when you build a custom report type that will limit what the secondary, tertiary, and you can even go down 4 levels to a 4th level object, what those choices are going to be. So we're going to talk about that briefly. Also want to talk about inner joins versus outer joins. So are we looking for the intersection? Are we looking for accounts with contacts, accounts with opportunities, opportunities with products, just that intersection? Or with the with or without, are we trying to retain that primary object and then filter down accordingly? So we're going to talk about both of those because it's really important. Otherwise, you may not be able to see the data that your use case demands. So let's start off with accounts. Let's say that's the primary object. Okay, and then we pick a secondary object, which is contacts. So we've just made a decision. And so now we've ruled out other objects that potentially we may want to access. As we work our way down the data architecture hierarchy, we get to opportunities, and then we can get to products, and that's as far down as we can go with the custom report type, is 4 levels. Now, let's say we went to accounts, contacts, and then we chose cases. So we just went to a fork in the road. So we're not at opportunities anymore over here on the left. We chose cases that can get us to return orders. So if I want to report with both opportunities and cases, as we know, we need a joined report, something that has a common parent, such as accounts or contacts, so we can create a joined report. But we're not going to get that with a custom report type. Sometimes you can't go down 4 levels. So if I pick opportunities, I can go down to products, and that's it. Or if I chose orders, I can continue to work my way down the hierarchy. So the data architecture hierarchy matters. The primary object sets the foundation for your custom report type. So now let's talk about that inner join with, outer join with or without relationship. So if we use the Venn diagram, which Salesforce uses very nicely in setup, that primary object, object A, we'll say accounts, inner join is with object B, accounts with contacts, or opportunities with products. But you can also have that with or without outer join. So now I've retained all of A and the intersection with B or C or D. You can also use a cross filter. And Jude's going to talk about this in his portion, but the cross filter has some limitations. First of all, it can only be applied to the secondary objects of the primary object. So I want to see A without B. I want to see accounts without contacts. But it doesn't go the other way around. I want to see opportunities without products. And not all editions have the cross-filter capability. So there are some limitations there. And then something that's very powerful with custom report types is the ability to traverse back up using the lookup relationships. So if I'm at opportunities and I want to look up, so we're not going down the data hierarchy, we're going up. I can get to accounts, of course, we saw that here, but look, I get to account name, contracts, created by, last modified by, price books, campaigns. So I can go across traversing 5 levels. I can access up to 1,000 fields through this lookup, and I can reference up to 60 objects. So a very powerful tool to look back up if you need to capture a field that you missed as you were building the data hierarchy. Other essential elements with a custom report type. Customization, we've talked about that, how you can access fields via a lookup. But you can also create sections on your report. So you can group those fields that you would pull down through lookup relationships into areas that make sense for your users. You can even rename the and choose how you want to display a field. You're not affecting the API name, you're not affecting the label, you're just changing it in your custom report type. You can also set certain fields as defaults. So let's take a use case. Let's try to generate, this is a very easy one because of the sake of time, a report listing accounts, but we want with and without opportunities. So we have to have fields from both account and opportunity records, and we want with and without opportunities. So the primary object, accounts. Secondary object, opportunities, and the relationship with or without, that's driving us to a custom report. So first of all, if I go to New York, and I go to accounts, here we have a report that's based on a primary object, and that's it. It's only accounts. So just to show that to you, the fields that are available, you can see I'm with accounts and it's the primary object, that's all there is. I can't get to anything else. I can't look up, for example, the contacts or whatever, because that's below accounts in the hierarchy. So that's all I'm gonna have. And if I try to go to filters, so for example, a cross filter, I can have other choices here, but I'm limited to accounts. Let's try it again with opportunities. So I click new report and I go to opportunities because there is no opportunities with accounts because that's going up the data hierarchy. You can only go down as you make the secondary object. And I click continue. Notice here that I am able to get to the account fields. They're at the bottom. But that's via the lookup. And so if I want to do filtering, for example, and I want to do a cross filter, opportunities, I can't get to accounts because it's above, accounts are above opportunities in the hierarchy. So we have to go to a custom report type. So again, we're in feature settings, reports and dashboards, report types, nice little diagram here. And we're going to continue and we're going to build a new custom report type. We want accounts as the primary object. We're going to call it accounts with and without opportunities. And notice that the description is required. Then you can decide where you want to store it. I could store it under accounts. Maybe I wanted opportunities. Maybe I want to put all of my custom report types under other reports, and that's where your users know where to find them. Totally up to you, but I do recommend creating a strategy. In this case, I'm going to put it under other report types. We're going to do deployed. Don't forget about that. So we have the accounts as the primary object, and I'm going to pick opportunities as the secondary object. And I want may or may not have records. So this is that inner join, but I want the outer join. So I can go there. And then notice I can still click down up to 4 levels if I wanted to, but this is good enough for our use case. Accounts with or without opportunities. And now for the best part. As I go to edit the layout, here I have all the fields on accounts. And then as I scroll down, all the fields on opportunities. Let's say I want to clean the report up a little bit. I say, you know, I don't want to confuse my users with unnecessary data. So this NAICS code, they don't need that. I can just drag it out. Now it's not going to show up as a choice for the users when they look at fields. And so I want to get rid of the NAICS description as well. I just pull it out, drag it. So now I've removed 2 of the fields. If I want to put it back in, I can just drag it back in if I so chose. I can make a default field. So if I double click, I can say I want the account owner to be by default. So it's just going to automatically show up as one of the columns when my user pulls up the report. And then, as we talked about the lookup, this is what's really powerful here. Add fields related via lookup. So if I click on that, and I want to go not to accounts, but I want to go to opportunity fields. So I'm looking from here. Now I'm going to look up. Here's what I showed you before. So maybe I want to look at something with the campaign. Maybe I want to know if it's active. And maybe I want to know the campaign member or the campaign name, for example. So I click OK. Now I've added 2 lookups. And I say, you know what? I want to have it in its own section. I don't want to just lump it in with opportunities. So I create a new section. I'm going to call it campaigns. And then I can just drag these 2 lookups down to campaigns. So again, up to 1,000 fields, up to 60 objects that you can reference via this very powerful lookup. So as you're building your custom report type, what are those 4 objects, 3 objects, or 2 objects that you want to use that you can then look up to? There's something else that I learned. It was at a Dreamforce presentation. I was not there live, but it's on YouTube. And it's a person named Evan Ponter. And he talks about deluxe custom report types. You can just Google it. It's a really interesting way to think about custom report types. And Evan's point is create 1 deluxe custom report type per object. Don't have a secondary object or tertiary, just 1 object. Then you start at the bottom and traverse your way up using the lookup up to 5 levels. So from opportunities, using the lookup feature, he can get to contracts and campaigns. From there, he can go up to contract owners, contracts, price books, parent campaigns, and so on and so forth. And the benefit to this is not a magic bullet. There are some shortfalls to this as well. But one of the benefits is you're not filtering out with this with or without inner join, outer join. You're getting access to all the different fields. So I thought that was worth sharing as well. Let's talk about reporting snapshots. So again, we'll do a brief configuration in setup, but we were under report types. We just went down 1 level to reporting snapshots. And basically 3 steps. Step number 1, what is the source report that I'm going to use? What's the data that I want to take pictures of daily, weekly, or monthly to measure change over time? And I might want to build that report special for the reporting snapshot because I might want to list as a column the account ID. I might want to list as a column the opportunity ID so I can create a lookup relationship. Because part number 2 is I'm going to create a custom object. We've all created custom objects, and this custom object is what's going to store the fields from that source report into the custom object. So you want to make sure you have the same data type, currency field to currency field, text field to text field, pick list to pick list. And then in step 3, you're going to create the actual reporting snapshot. So I'll walk you through that very quickly. So again, what's the report? What's the custom object? And then let's build the reporting snapshot. So if I want to go to a report that I already pre-built, and let's say I want to look at new opportunities. I want to measure that, how that's changing week to week, day to day, month to month. So here is my new opportunities for the snapshot report. So I've added some fields that I normally wouldn't add in, such as opportunity ID or account ID, because I'm going to need that for mapping purposes with my custom object. Okay, so I have step 1, source report. Step 2, I'm going to go up Object Manager, and I'm going to create a custom object. I've already done that. And so we're looking at new opportunities. So here is a custom object that will allow me to map the fields in step 3, which we'll get to in just a second, from that source report. Notice I have an account name that's a text field, but I also have an account name that's a lookup, so I can reference that account ID, amount, expected revenue, opportunity, whatever. And in step 3, we go to setup into the reporting snapshots. We're going to click continue. And in this case, again, I've already pre-built it, reporting snapshot for new opportunities. And so to click the edit button here, you'll see here's the mapping that you're able to do as you walk across what's in that source report and how do you want to map it into the reporting snapshot. You then schedule the reporting snapshot as well. It can be daily, weekly, or monthly. The default setting is for 1 month, but you can extend that out further out, and then you pick the time. And that, in a nutshell, is how you build a reporting snapshot. So let's talk about advantages and disadvantages. So custom report types are great for optimizing data management because you can be very specific. What are my default fields? What fields do I want to be able to reference using the lookup relationships? You can really get very detailed on what is it you're trying to show to look at the business case. And it's a great user experience because users don't have to try to figure out what all these fields are. You can pre-build the report the way that you think they're going to want it. What are the drawbacks? Well, maintenance is one, but there is a bit of good news. So with the Winter 21 release, if you click on, again, just going down one level lower, Reports and Dashboard Settings, there's a new checkbox, automatically add new custom fields to the custom report type layouts. So now you don't have to always, every time you add a new field, go back to your custom report types. This will happen automatically. When you add a new field, you'll see this new column here, or this new row, auto add to custom report type. It's checked by default. So when you add a new field, it'll be added to the custom report type. Pretty neat. Doesn't completely solve the issue though, because it's not going to address cases that are not the primary object. So some of those lookups you're trying to do may not have those fields. So there's still some maintenance that's going to be required, but it is a step in the right direction. Reporting snapshots. Great for measuring change over time. You're not getting a static view, you're getting a dynamic view. And you get faster run times because you've already pre-sorted the data that you're trying to look at. But you've got storage requirements. You may need an archiving strategy. So again, with the good comes the bad. And we don't have time to look at this in detail, but I think as you're getting ready for the advanced admin certification, you need to know what all the tools are at your disposal. The opportunity object has a lot of built-in functionality with opportunity history, but it only tracks these 4 fields. Opportunity trends, but only on the first day of the month. We've already talked about collaborative forecasting in a previous session with Matt. Field history tracking is great when you're looking at specific cases, but not great when you're trying to aggregate change over time. Sometimes you can just solve an issue with a formula, year to year, year over year, year to date. You can solve that just with a formula. There's historical trend reporting, but again, limitations. You can only do the current month and go back to the previous 3. You can only pick 5 dates. You can only have 8 fields, and you only have 4 objects that are supported. And then you have reporting snapshots. One limitation is you can only do the report that you choose can only have 2,000 rows. But you can get around that by filtering, right? So let's say you had 10,000 opportunities. Then you sort them by amount, or you sort them by industry, or you sort them by type, new customer, etc. So there are ways to get down below 2,000. And then you have to that's another maintenance thing. If your report ever gets to over 2,000 records, then it's not going to work. So reporting snapshots do require maintenance as you move forward.
George, question on that limitation there. Are you suggesting there that we could have more than one report feed the same snapshot table?
Yes, you need to. Well, you'd probably. I'm not sure, Terry. That's a good question. Your report cannot have more than 2,000 rows.
So, if I were to filter in essence, I guess it would be setting up 2 snapshots.
Yes.
One with one set of data and another with maybe it's closed won opportunities and closed lost opportunities. So it's a different report, but it can all feed into the same reporting snapshot object. Would that be correct?
As I understand it, I haven't tried it because my org didn't have over 2,000 records. So that's something I didn't have a chance to play with. But in theory, yes, from the research that I did, by creating the filter, then you're good to go. Again, you got to be careful because if, let's say you're at 1,800 and you think you're fine, but then your snapshot's going to take a picture and you're at 2,001. Well, it's not going to take the snapshot. And if you're not regularly checking your reporting snapshots, you'll have nothing for that day, that week, that month. Good question, Terry. And then for complex charting, as we wrap up, just a couple things I think to keep in mind. What are the tools that you have available to display your data? In reports, you see in the column on the left, dashboards, you can see in the column on the right, and even when you can use those tools, right? So for example, if you have a matrixed report, so you're grouping by both columns and rows, you can do a stacked bar or stacked vertical bar chart, but you can't do that in a tabular report or a summary report. We're only grouping by rows. So when you can use these tools and what makes the most sense. And so here's a potential example. Here's the opportunity pipeline snapshots, taken over time. And we want a 3-week running average. So here you're going to have to get into a summary formula, which is a subsequent topic, and using the previous group value function, and then clicking the plot as a line chart in order to get the 3-week running average. So being familiar with all the tools at your disposal, I think will be really important to try to get after this issue of complex charting. But there was nothing I could find specifically that said, here are the things you need to know for complex charting. Terry, any thoughts on that? I know you and I had a discussion about complex charting.
No, I think that's kind of what they're trying to make sure is that we have a better understanding of some of the unique types of charts. I'm taking a guess at this too, because there isn't anything out there that I found that specifically says this is what we mean by complex charting. I'm assuming that it is the charts that go beyond your typical bar chart, columns, lines, donuts that we all use and know quite well. The ability to, like the photo there shows, to have multiple, the line chart along with the bar chart. That I think something could be a good example of what they may be referring to.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry. And then that's all I have. I can stand by for any questions, or maybe we save all questions until the end. So because some of these things overlap. So next up is Jude for custom summary formulas, bucketing, join reports, and cross filters.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, George, I'm going to have you continue sharing if you can. Jude is not with us today, and neither is Rebecca. So we're going to kind of do a group exercise on some of this, and the topics that that Jude has, and if I can see that. So on this particular section, we're talking about the custom summary formulas, bucketing, joined reports, and cross filters. So I'm just going to kind of throw it out to the group. Custom summary formula fields. Anybody have any great experience with using formulas inside of reports that you can kind of share some of what you've ran into, the good, the bad? This is the part where we all need to kind of participate. So.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with custom summary formulas. Obviously, one, you got to have a grouping on your report to be able to do a custom summary formula. One of the frustrating things with custom summary formulas is you can't filter off of your summarized value. So like we run reports a lot where we have summaries of sums of groupings, and then we want to say, give me all the ones where the sum is more than this amount or whatever. So that can be a restriction with the filtering side, I guess, with custom summary formulas.
What's a use case, Tanner, that where you've needed to go that route? What's it look like?
So we have custom object called policies that basically it's like transactions that holds all the premium records. And so we do a lot of our filtering on those records. So we only want certain policies with an issue date of after this date and this type of product and so on. And then we want to summarize it based off of the agent or rep that wrote those policies. And then we want to say, okay, out of those sums for those agents, only give me the ones where the sums are over $1 million or $2 million, because we want to take that and maybe put it into a campaign. So we'll have to export it to Excel, chop off the bottom half that we don't want, and then import it back into Salesforce. So,
okay. All right. Anybody else use I already lost the term for that, custom summary formulas on your reports?
I will say too, the parent group val and the previous group val are super powerful.
Yes.
Formulas to get with the parent group val percentages of the grand totals. Good job, George. And the previous group val to see sort of like a running tally or total of whether it's going up or down in a percentage of the previous month. So.
Okay. Anyone else have thoughts on?
I've used them at the parent and pre-group val. I still struggle with and find slightly confusing. It's a lot of kind of testing, test and error. Yeah, test and error until you finally get it right. But eventually you get there. But they're a little tricky to work with, I would say.
I'm in that same camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some of those things that we don't do that often, and it's great when we need it that it's available to us. But yeah, it's every time I do it, I have to stop and figure it out again.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what I gotta do.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else on that?
Patrick, to your point, I think the fact that it exists is what's so important, because you don't have to have it memorized how to do it. It's when you need it, that it's there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Again, getting back to the certification, I could see when would you use parent group val? this group val. Like maybe they would even have a formula, multiple formulas with it, which is the right way to use it. So, but if you don't even know those tools exist, then you're sunk. So,
yeah, absolutely. And and what's the scenario, or what's the if I were presented with a scenario, what is the right type of report, or what feature in reports would I use to accomplish this? That would be a good way to look at this as well. What about bucketing reports? Give a definition on bucketing reports. I just did this, I think, yesterday for a client. I did a bucketing.
Yeah, we do a lot of bucketing. Honestly, it gives the users a lot of power, which I like, as far as how they want to see the data. Like, okay, well, let's just bucket these different records that really mean the same in your eyes and put them into the name that you want, and then you can use that to group by and put on dashboards. So
it creates a new column on your report that allows you to group certain values, or a range of values into a more summarized version of the original source. So let's say I've got a percentage, we'll say, on a record, and it goes from 0 to 100, and I want to put all of the maybe let's think of it as a grade. So if it's below 60%, then it's a fail. So you could define that bucket as fail is anything that is less than 60. D would be your, it's been too long since I've been in school. The 60 to 70, is that right? That's and so forth. So it just allows you to take those numbers and put them into groups. Buckets, I think, are pretty easy concept. Those work.
And we use buckets quite a bit. So I've used it to, hey, I just want to look at certain sales reps and their numbers, and then put all the others compared to everybody else. So I've done it that way. Use it. Yeah, you can use buckets instead of creating another field like a formula field or such if you need like one case for a report. So that's why they're really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good call, because a lot of times we would just create a new formula field on the object itself and pull that in as a report.
Mm-hmm. And you do have the option too, to the things that you're not bucketing for that field, to say either bucket everything else in an other column, or they just keep their name of the field. So, and the restriction would be you only get 20 buckets.
Oh, good call.
And so that comes up.
Is it more? Can you have more than one bucketed column on the report, Tanner, or is it just that within a given bucket you're limited to 20 categories?
That is a good question. Let me run a report right now and try it.
What Tanner's doing that. The next one is the joined reports. And this one confused me too quite a bit when I first started doing these, trying to figure out, okay, what's the key to get these reports side by side? Anybody have any experience with the joined reports that you want to talk to or can help the group with? Anybody using them? Bucket limits. Stats got that in the chat window.
We use joint reports, and we have a lot of issues. We converted from a CPQ to an OMS, and we have users that want to use their old reports, and they don't really jive up correctly. If we're using the old system was products, and now we're using product node. It's a different. So when we do audits, we'll have a joined report. but it's very limited on the data manipulation, and they have to have related fields in order to utilize that.
Sure. Scott, you shared a link on the bucket limits. Let me share that and we'll kind of run through that real quick. That was some good stuff there. So buckets, got a description of what they are there, and the limits. So total bucket fields allowed per report is 5. There's the 20 number of buckets per field that Tanner mentioned. Total values allowed per bucket. I'm not sure what the total buckets per bucket field. Total values per bucket.
I put 20 values in one bucket.
Okay. All right. There's the. So, oh, okay. Gotcha. So like if it was a pick list or something like that, you could have 20 different values that drop into the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha. When I use the bucket, I'm often using it on a number as opposed to a pick list. But yeah, that makes sense. I get it now. Thank you. Total values allowed per bucket field. And it's available in enterprise and unlimited and only. Complex, we use bucket fields for multiple reports. Yeah, that's only used for a single report. You have to create a custom summary formula fields cannot be used for bucketing. Reporting snapshots. Buckets are available for reporting snapshot only if the source report is tabular. Okay. Historical trend reporting cannot be used there. Report types, standard report types fields. The standard report type fields cannot be bucketed. So this has to be a custom field. Is that what that's trying to say for those that have used it? Standard report type fields cannot be bucketed. Anybody have any insight on what that one is referring to? Not sure what that is. Buckets with values that exceed more than 1,000 characters in aggregate will not appear in dashboard. So that's good stuff. Anything else on the? Let's see, I lost my tab. Anything else on the joined reports? Not, we can go to the next one, which was the cross filters. And I can tell you, I don't know that I have any idea about cross filter reports. Does anybody have any experience with those? I'm not even sure how to define for you what they are. So if somebody has a definition for cross filter, we can certainly look it up as well.
I touched on the cross filter briefly. So the cross filter, let me share my screen.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, I don't have my report anymore. 1 second. So we'll go into a dev org, but what I was trying to get after here with cross filters in their limitations, if I want accounts without contacts, because I want to know who's the account owner and why don't I have a contact, or accounts without opportunities, I can do that with a cross filter. So the primary object can eliminate the secondary object. It's a powerful tool, but it only cuts down the data hierarchy, not back up. Now that makes sense, right? I don't want contact, I don't want opportunities without accounts. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not available in all editions. So if you have essentials or professional, you don't get it. So what does it look like?
Let's put a.
I'm going to go into the dev board.
Then that's got an example there too, so that's good. And I'll make sure those are in our meeting YouTube channel description as well for those links, Scott. So thank you for adding those.
So if I go into my sales app, and I go to reports, and I go to new report, and I go to accounts with partners, and I go to filters, and I go here. This is where you can add the cross filter. And so what the cross filter will do, I can have accounts with or without, and then I decide what's that secondary object. And that secondary object does not have to be, with standard objects that you have access to quite a few, as long as they're below the primary object in the hierarchy of the data architecture. So I want accounts without cases. So I can give a kudos to the people who are running those accounts. I'm not sure my reward will show, but that's what cross filters are. It's this button right.
I've always in the past just created a custom report type for that, and I think you're just showing me that I don't have to do that now.
It's available with standard reports as well, but the key is the limitation is you're working your way down the hierarchy. So for example, if I go to, well, in this, the one that I picked, I only have accounts available here. Yeah. And then it's with or without, and then the secondary object. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else have any experience or thoughts with cross filter or cross reports?
Yeah, we use them quite a bit actually.
A lot of reports, don't you, Tanner?
I used to be the reporting guy.
All right, excellent.
So, I would just to add to George's example is that he added that cross filter, and then you can add sub filters under your cross filter to even narrow it down further. So like he had accounts without cases or with cases. You can say cases that had a date of last week or last year or this certain type of case. So you can narrow it down even further. So like us, we might be running a report with accounts and contacts and maybe a custom object. But we want to say, okay, well, there's another custom object that's not on a report type yet that we want to reference, and it's related to the contact. So I want to say, give me contacts with training. So we want to see that the training was completed for a certain product or something like that, and then still use our current report type that we're using to look at those specific contacts.
Excellent. Very good. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Next, we then are jumping into the dashboards and specifically looking at the dashboard filters and dynamic dashboards. So let's start with dynamic dashboards. Someone care to give me your definition of a dynamic dashboard?
Yeah, I'm tracking it as the viewer. So is the dynamic dashboard set as the CEO who can see all opportunities, or is it the regional sales manager who can see all opportunities in that region? Or do you want to set it for the user so the user can only see their opportunities? So that's the dynamic dashboard. And then the filters are separate. I want to filter by industry, right? So that doesn't matter who the user is. That's for filtering the report by escalated cases versus new cases, or however you want to do it. So that's the distinction I have in my head between dynamic dashboards, which is you only get a certain number. There's a limitation. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. And
I was just going to ask, does anybody know that number? How many dynamic dashboards do we have in our orgs?
5.
Is it 5?
At least for our version. I don't know if
I
it's
think that is correct for enterprise. I think unlimited adds more to that. Just want to see if I can find it.
I got it. I'll send it.
Thank you.
It's always good to know the limits, what additions or the number of, and that's one of the things I was trying to bring out in mind for those different ways of tracking change over time. What objects you can use, or how many fields you can show, or for how long can you show the field. So anything with limits always seems to be fair game because it's about what tool to use when, right?
So let me show this real quick. You guys probably clicked the link already as well. Just for the sake of being able to show it and talk to it. So enterprise, it's 5 for org, so we were right there. The performance and unlimited edition bumps it up to twice that number, to 10. And the developer has 3. I'm assuming almost all of you are familiar with dynamic dashboards. Is that a safe assumption there? I think we probably all do that quite a bit. I do like the filtering on dashboards as well. That one has saved me from having to write multiple dashboards for people frequently as well. So it's kind of an alternative to the dynamic one. So if I've got, there's some limitations. I don't like that it's, and correct me if I'm misspeaking here on this, but in the filters themselves, when I built them in the past, we always had to hard code the values in those filters. So if I was filtering by person, I actually had to put the person's name in. Patrick, you're shaking your head. Yes, that's
correct.
Okay. To me, that's one downside, one negative to the filters. But I do like the fact that I can do that, and I can have my dashboard show me all information, and then I can adjust the pick lists that sit at the top of the dashboard down to change the way that it's presenting information to me. So it's kind of sort of gives you a little bit of a dynamic light feel, but with user control. And there is it 3 filters, the dynamic filters that we can have on a dashboard?
Yeah, the one you can't like multi-select a pick list value either, which is a little bit of a bummer in those. But I use them quite a bit. Same reason. Filter by like a record type or something.
Yeah.
We do some almost like bucketing on our filters sometimes, because you can do or put your commas in there and list out a bunch of different values.
Good suggestion. Good idea. Awesome. Anything else on the topic? I'll just kind of go broader with the report topic and dashboard topic in general. Everybody feel pretty good about this particular section? So I'm going to stop recording. Thank you for your participation and helping cover those topics. That was awesome.